All right, and we are live. Thank you, Bridget, for coming on the podcast. Welcome to Happy Dance's Guide to the Revolution. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us here. So before we dive into anything, I have some housekeeping things to take care of. So the first thing I have to do is I want to give a huge shout out to my Aunt Judy for being our biggest donor to date. She made a generous contribution there to the GoFundMe, and I would encourage anybody listening to do the same. It really helps kind of move us towards that vision, and it's really super great for her to do that. She's always been super supportive of pretty much everything I've ever done. She's fantastic, so it's good to see you doing that as well. So that's huge. And then the next thing I wanted to hop into is just a quick clarification. I think something I said on my podcast with Mike Vorosky was sort of misinterpreted, and someone kind of addressed it, and I just want to clarify. I brought up the kind of the concept of basically when you're in stressful situations and like with limited resources, there's kind of this natural human tendency to like me first and then like family first. And then after that, sometimes people don't make the cut, you know, it's kind of like, and I don't think that's necessarily good or necessarily bad, but I do think we're all sort of guilty of that in some way. And I think kind of just acknowledging that that sort of behavior exists, I think is important to kind of address these problems, because these are global problems, and obviously your family is always going to be important to you, right? But I just wanted to address it because it made it seem like I was saying screw everybody else, and that's definitely not what I was saying. I was more just addressing that happens, you know, especially when you're in a situation where you feel like your resources are limited or you can't help everybody, that you really have to rein it in, and people do. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. So, okay. So the next thing I like to start with is like how we met. So I actually was lucky enough to be invited to your wedding.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. You married Eric, and he's now my brother-in-law, and you're now my sister-in-law. I mean, well, I'm still engaged, so I don't know how that technically all works, but certainly moving in that direction. Yeah. And the wedding was awesome. Your family was great. Your dad was a riot. I loved talking to him. He was so funny, you know, and I thought he was cool at first. And then as the night went on, I was like, this dude's even cooler than I thought.
He had a fun night.
Yeah. So that was amazing. And now that was like, what was that, like 3 months ago or something?
3 or 4.
Still happily married. Everything's going great.
Yeah, we're good. We're very, very blessed to have met each other.
That's excellent. Yeah, and some of the stories there were awesome. I still think about the one that I think your sister told during the speech with what was like a Greek myth or whatever, with the people with limbs, and like we're actually made to be this 8-limbed creature when we join with our partner. That was pretty cool. Like,
I hadn't heard of that before. She's so smart for even bringing that up.
Yeah, and it's like over the past year or two, I've been able to take a more, a less critical eye at stories like that, and instead like really just try to extract out like the meaningful parts of it. Because like obviously we're not 8-limbed creatures, right? But it's like symbolically, and you can use that as a dramatization of like we're more effective as that maybe, you know, and that's cool. Yes. Real cool. So. Okay, so then the next thing I want to talk about before we dive into some of the work that you're doing is your general thoughts on the Declaration of Interdependence that I wrote, and kind of the mission and what we're aiming for here with this movement. I just want to kind of get your thoughts on it, things that you like, things that you don't like, questions. Just kind of go over that first.
Sure.
And, yeah.
Sure. Well, I think what I really enjoy about it is you're bringing it back to the people, like back to like the one person who can make the change and that can impact many. Mm-hmm. You know, our government is kind of the opposite way, where you have larger powers making choices. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what I really resonated with the most, because I believe in that exact same mission. Like we can, as like one human, create a huge ripple effect in the world that impacts maybe 5 people to start, but then those 5 people go on, they impact 10, 20, you know, and then it compounds.
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest love from the Declaration, because it speaks to like what I truly believe in as well.
Yes. Sort of the power of the individual to impact the social.
Yes, exactly. And if you were to sum up the Declaration in like one sentence, what would you say?
I would say we are aiming for nonpartisan political reform, specifically using technology to give democracy back to the people.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's been a lot of barriers between the people and true democracy, and I feel like we have the tools now to remove some of those barriers and put some more functional pieces in place.
Yep. And that's, are you familiar with like the Age of Pisces and the Age of Aquarius?
A little bit. We're in that transition state, right? It's like the Aquarius is here, or at least it's arriving shortly, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it depends on like what path you are hearing this from, but that time of like 2011, 2012, when the Mayan calendar was like ending and people were like, this is the end of the world. It was really a start to a new era, where you're bringing the power back to the individual, where, you're not looking towards gurus as the only teacher or religion, right? Because like now that's all shifting. Right. It's a lot more broad, and we see the connectedness between us all. That is the movement. That is the Age of Aquarius.
So myself and you and others, or maybe we're riding that wave a little bit of that. Yeah. The new age and the transition that comes with it, and kind of re-empowering the individual.
Totally. And technology is part of that. So you already know it without knowing that that's part of it.
Yeah. That's really cool. And it has to do with like the precession of the equinoxes, right? It's like you move through the like the zodiac signs in reverse, but it takes like 2,000 years or something, 2150 or something per cycle. I remember learning about it. Yeah.
I'm not sure of the exact amount, but I think that we were in the Piscean age for like 5,000 years. Like it was a really, really long time. And I might be completely fudging those numbers, but I want to say it was a while that we were in that phase. And you can really see that throughout history. Religion, power, all of those more patriarchal ideologies, they ran the show. And now we're shifting to basically unity consciousness. You can think of it as
unity consciousness. That's something that Prometheus is talking about a lot, and that was he was my first guest. He believes in all that, and the unity of consciousness, and kind of it all feeding up into one and feeding back down into everything. And
yes,
it's pretty wild. Like sometimes I can't wrap my head around it, and but I can like imagine it too. Even though there's not necessarily like hard evidence, sometimes something happens and you're like, this seems like so. Raven and I talk a lot about Pulp Fiction sometimes, and the crazy scene with like divine intervention. When we've argued about whether things are divine intervention or whether it's coincidence, and it's like maybe it just depends on how you look at it.
Perception is everything.
All right, so let's dive into any other comments on the Declaration or questions for me before we start talking about some of the things you've been working on.
No, but I think it might come up just in our conversation.
Definitely is all ties in. Okay, so you had this women's circle that was maybe 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago now. Kind of lose track of time, and Raven got to attend that, and she said it was amazing, and she was super looking forward to it and excited about it, like weeks leading up into. And I kind of joked with her a little bit because that's something that I would love to attend. And obviously I'm not a woman, so that makes it difficult, right? And then I also joked that like, well, meanwhile you guys are doing that, and I'm out with my buddies just like laughing about how big of idiots we were in high school, and like making fun of each other and watching. No, that wasn't the night of the UFC, I don't think, but. Anyway, watching football and being guys, and I guess talk about that experience, the women's circle, and like why you do that, and like what value it brings, and then maybe we can also talk about like where men fit into that, or is this kind of our responsibility to build something for ourselves, or just kind of working in that direction too.
Yeah, I love that you bring this up, because you're not the only man in my life who was like, this would be cool for guys too. So I'll touch upon that. Essentially, women's circles are an ability to just come together, join with like-minded women, and to really allow yourself to be vulnerable, to trust, create connection, community, And typically at a circle, we'll talk about a different topic. We'll do meditation or some kind of practice to allow us to drop into the space. We'll reflect on it, share, yada, yada. And they're really, really powerful because as we're moving into this like more unity consciousness, we see that we're not alone in our issues, right? Like we all are having some sort of similar thing happen in our lives, and the circles allow you to help and just be there as support for anyone in the circle. So I love to do them because as I've continued on this journey of really reawakening, right? My friendships have shifted. I went from a girl who used to party a lot, drink a lot, smoke a lot of marijuana all the time to a person who meditates every day. I put good food into my body. I practice techniques and habits that empower me to be the best person I can be, with a drink every now and then, but it's a very different lifestyle. So my friendships have changed, and I was like, crap, I need to have some like friends in this like new version of myself. So that's why I really started doing it.
Oh, that's a really good idea, because you know, you need to move on when you change. You know, you can't hang on to people who don't fit your lifestyle anymore, or you feel like they're holding you back. And it's difficult. And I've gone through that too, where they're friends for so long, but it's like they're not where you're at. And like when you spend time with them, it almost feels like you're getting worse rather than getting better. And it's like, it hurts to say that, you know, and you also want to help them too. But at a certain point, you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped either, you know? So it's tricky. You know?
Yep. Exactly. And everyone's on their own journey. So it's not to say like I am better from people I was friends with for all my life. No, it's just that my journey is taking a different path, and I need to honor myself on that journey so I can be the best version of myself and surround myself with people that are like me. Yeah.
And I think it's also interesting that you were kind of living that lifestyle of maybe drinking too much and smoking a little bit too much. And even though you had friends around you, people around you, you didn't necessarily feel connected with them. And you didn't say that, but I kind of like extracted it, because that's probably partially why you were engaging in some of those behaviors more than you would have liked to, because you're kind of filling that void, you know? And then as you dive into things like meditation and yoga and kind of improving on yourself, you start to build that connection. And maybe that connection is first with yourself. Maybe it wasn't there before. And I believe that the opposite of addiction is connection. Because you were to be able to build those connections, and now you've kind of built a strong foundation for yourself as an individual. Now you're trying to kind of build those connections outwards now, and kind of refill that friend group with people that share your headspace, that share your values. And I think that's a good logical progression there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And our society teaches that, you know, alcohol is just a norm, right? Like that's just part of our society. It's legal. That's part of your growth experience. You turn 21 years old and hey, you're out at all bars and everyone's buying you shots. That's normal. It's normal to wake up with a hangover. And I'm like not okay with that being normal. We're meant to feel good. And what you're saying about filling a void is probably true for so many people who might listen to this. Like it's true for so many people. We don't know ourselves.
And you know, you say normal, and I definitely see your point. It's like it's normalized as like okay behavior, like there's nothing wrong with it. And like you pointed out that there is kind of something wrong with it. If you're compromising your health for, you know, the night, obviously, but also into the next day, and you know, that's not okay. Not really, you know, and the fact that we've made it okay is kind of sad, you know. And but it's also normal to some extent to like engage in behaviors that modify your mental state. You know, it's like it's not something new necessarily. It's something that people have been doing for a long time. So it's like trying to balance this thing that's like sort of natural to want to do, but also understanding that there's a line where it becomes a lot more destructive than it is beneficial to you.
Yep. And I completely agree. I have experimented a lot in my younger years too. And it was very enjoyable. I actually think that my husband listens to some podcasts also on like people who will microdose shrooms and stuff like this. And not enough to get, you know, be tripping, right? But just enough to expand the consciousness. And that's honestly what I think it allowed me to do at a younger age. I was just like, there's more. I don't know what it is yet. Can't put my finger, can't put the words to it yet. But there's more.
Yeah. And I think you have to have that realization that like the partying is empty. Like it feels fulfilling for a little while and it feels like you're getting something out of it. But then you realize, oh, I'm in this cycle and like not getting anything back. And hopefully you're not far enough down that path that you can still kind of pull yourself out and get some, you know, replace it with something else.
Yep. Totally.
Okay. The next thing I want to talk to you about is a quote that you had on one of your Facebook posts. I think it was on your business page. Is that Blissful Bridget? Is that tell everybody about your professional Facebook page before we get into this.
I think it's actually Bridget Aileen on Facebook, but my Instagram is Blissful Bridget if anyone wants to connect. And essentially my mission in the world is to empower each and every one of us to just come back to our truest, highest version of ourselves. And that looks different for every single person, but I call myself a guide because I can guide you back to just some of these fundamental teachings, these principles, but you alone are your teacher. Like I won't fix you. I won't heal you. I won't save you. You are your own best teacher. So it's really up to the individual to make the changes in their lives. And I really feel very strongly about that.
I agree. It's like the library is filled with books, right? But you're the one that has to read them. You're the one that has to internalize the message and figure out what to do with it. Yep. And even if someone's lecturing you, they've read all the books in the library and it still is, you still have to be the one to listen and take what they're saying and figure out how to use it. So totally agree. Okay. So this quote that I like, do things that scare you, change your language about your life. Those are two huge ideas. So let's just take them one at a time. So the first is do things that scare you. That's something that Raven and I have talked a lot about. It's like fear dates. And I know she brought that up to you at the women's circle as well. But for me personally, like the things that are the most scary are the things that make you the strongest. You know, it seems like that. Anytime I'm in a moment where it's like, okay, I'm terrified to take a step forward here, or I'm terrified to speak, or I'm terrified to like go and do that thing. Like ultimately, if I do it, I come out on the other side and like I'm better. Like the anxiety that I was dealing with, or like the fear that I had, it's like I overcame it. Whatever it was like this challenging thing. But once you're in it, you emerge from the other side. It's like you transform as a result of going through that difficult piece. And so what are some examples of something that like that you've dealt with that scared you, that you faced, and like how do you think it kind of helps mold you into a stronger person?
So many things. Raven did bring this up at the women's circle, your fear dates, which I love. So smart. And I always like to say, like, lean into the fear because there's something better on the other side.
I like that.
Something much better on the other side. Okay, examples of that in my own life. Well, one of the ways that I really got on this path even more was I quit my job in New York City. And to like
that's scary.
Average person, like that's scary. That's really, really scary.
Yeah.
My parents, I'm very, very blessed. They're very go your own way, do whatever lights you up, like keep going. So I will say I did have that support. Like it wasn't like my parents were saying, no. That probably would have been scarier. But I did quit my job. I decided to go travel for a little bit, go study yoga. I don't even know why. I felt like I was divinely guided. So that's the language I would, that's how I would use it. That was scary. But
define the guide. Is that what you said?
Divinely guided.
Oh, divinely guided. Got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was scary. I love speaking, and I know one of my missions and gifts in this world is to speak. But when I do speaking engagements, I'm still scared.
Oh, yeah.
So I see fear as layers. Like I always think there's going to be something that pushes you, but it's okay. It's a layer. Like you kind of peel back and you kind of just keep moving towards it. And it's fear. It's scary. But my friend Jason, who is just a great human, he always says fear is very similar to excitement, right? Like those butterflies in your stomach. So he's like, why don't you just start perceiving it in a very different way?
Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
Right? Because it does kind of feel the same. like those nervousness, the anxious before you do something.
Yeah, it's like you can feel the moment almost.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, like you're stepping up to bat, or you're stepping up to shoot the free throw, or you're stepping into the, wherever you've prepared yourself for, and now's the time to like for action. And there's always going to be those butterflies in your stomach before those moments. And yeah, wow, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you said layers, and then what was I going to say too? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought here a little bit, but yeah. So yeah, those things that are underneath, when you pull back those layers, I mean, you find your core. That's still you under there.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you thought was protecting you, like really wasn't. Oh, I know what I was going to say. It's like the fear is like natural too. I think that's something that we have to accept, is that like your body's trying to protect you because like, I don't know, 10,000 years ago, let's say, like if you were doing something new, you're supposed to be afraid because new meant you could potentially die, and you're trying to protect yourself. But we have to now, in like the modern era, realize that the things we're doing, we're triggering the same like biological mechanisms of fear within us, but like they're also not that dangerous either. Like we're not going to, kill a saber-toothed tiger. We're not going to war necessarily, and it's like, it's not as dangerous as you might think, but it's the mechanisms in your brain are the same. So it takes a little bit of mental kind of understanding and effort to overcome that and like trick your brain into thinking like, no, we're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. You're just going to face this, peel off this layer, and you'll be stronger for it.
I think it sounds like you and Eric have read some of the same books, or he's about to read, I'll have to get back to you on the name of it, but it's basically like we have been, I think it's like Civilized to Death or something, if you've ever heard of it.
Okay.
But essentially how we've become like, so we don't take chances, we don't take risks, like we just are so programmed to keep staying in our own box.
Yep.
And it's not helping us at all.
Yeah. And I want to come back to this change your language about your life, because that's a huge thing too. But I think what you just said kind of reminded me of the bullet point I have a little further down is another quote that you had. What do I need to release to feel like the best version of myself? And that's kind of like we're talking about here. It's like the same thing. It's like that fear of like ripping off that layer, and ultimately what that is, it's a sacrifice. And a lot of our religious language is built around sacrifice. And I think what part of the problem that people face as individuals today is like, we don't really have to sacrifice anymore. Like we don't live in a world in the modern era where like sacrifice is like essential to survival. Because I mean, it is, but like you can get by with pretty minimal sacrifices, and live pretty comfortably. But just because it's not like necessary for survival, it makes it even more important, because like we shouldn't just be trying to survive. We should be trying to thrive and be like our best possible versions of ourselves. And like, that's where the sacrifice comes in. Like, what of myself do I need to kill and bury and move on from in order to be a better, stronger, more complete version of myself? It's like the same idea.
Yeah, I have a Facebook group that I like to do like weekly little trainings in. And the most recent one on Saturday was, how committed are you to your own success? And I talked about success here. We're not talking about just financial wealth here.
Right.
Like that can be one part of it, but success could be opportunities in your life. Success could be how good you feel about yourself on a daily basis. How committed are you to that? And I've gotten to the point where like I'm so committed to myself that I just won't stop, because if I'm committed to myself, the ripple effect happens. I can make you never want to stop in your life. I can make someone else be like, I'm not giving up on myself. Like I'm going to keep going to the gym, like whatever it is in your life. But that commitment or sacrifice sometimes, because the commitment can be a sacrifice. Saying no to, I'm not going to go out on Friday night because I need to wake up at 6 a.m. to meditate. Like that looks like a sacrifice, but it's a commitment to yourself. And that's what's important. And that's what's going to move the needle forward for you in your life to keep going.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes is, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. You can go out with your friends and you can drink and have a good time and be a little hungover, but you can't get up the next morning and go to yoga. You can't you're giving up something. Every decision to gain something is a decision to give something else up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's prioritization too. It's like we have the power of prioritization. Like what's most important to you? And like you're saying, commitment. Like what are you committed to? And like what you should be committed to is yourself, right? And not in like a selfish way, but in a way that makes you stronger and helps you help the people around you and all those good things.
Yeah. And I mean, I believe that everything starts from within, because our perception of reality is our perception within too. So it has to start here. Like if your life, literally, you're saying it sucks, everything is terrible, that is your perception based on your experiences, how you talk to yourself. This is like where that languaging comes in.
Yeah,
that
let's talk
is your
about
perception. Woo! I mean, let's think about it. Most of us, I wrote a post about this the other day. Same shit, different day.
Yep, I read that. Yep.
I've said that all the time.
Everybody said that. Yeah, of course.
It's programmed into our like pattern of language. But spelling is a spell. That's what Shaman Durek, who's a man I follow. He's a first generation shaman, and helps celebrities actually. So he has an interesting.
What's his last name? Durek?
Durek, Durek. It's actually his first name.
Okay.
Yeah. But he says spelling is a spell. So like what you project through your voice, you're literally casting a spell on your life. So if you continue to move through life, same shit, different day, guess what? You're going to be given same shit, different day all the time.
Yeah. And it comes back to that cycle too, right? It's like you reinforce that. It's like same shit, different day. It's like, okay, well now you believe that. And now because you believe that, it's true. And now that it's true, it just builds, and you continue to use that language. You have to be able to put a stop to it. You have to be like, no, it's not the same shit, different day. This is a new day. And like I'm in at least partial control of the shit that happens. And I'm going to take responsibility for that. I'm not just going to be a victim of my own negative mental thoughts.
Yeah. But most of us aren't aware. Like this is the stuff we're not taught about in school. We're not taught about the mental dialogue. We're not taught to be aware. I think awareness is always the first step, because most of us are unaware, and it really is just programmed throughout society, because we hear some person say it and then we say it. And we hear it on TV, we say it. Like it's all within the subconscious programming of the humans on this planet. But it's up to you, like what you said. We have to take responsibility, because we can't control the weather, but we can control how we react to the weather.
Yes.
We have some responsibility in our life.
Yeah. And you can control, how early you get up to go shovel the driveway, and you can control, having your hat and gloves there ready so you can go out. If you like leave your whole life in a state of chaos, then like when things that are difficult happen, like you're not able to deal with them because you've already said that you can't. The snow's too much. I can't deal with it. It's like, but you could though. You do have some control over at least the way you look at it. It's like, so what? You're going to be late to work today for the snow. It's like, what are you going to like make everything worse because of that? You're going to hate yourself because of that. You're going to tell yourself that you're not a good person because of that. It's like, I don't know. Just do better next time. Just do what you can and find a way to do better the next time, because we do this thing every Thanksgiving where we go around the table and everyone says what they're thankful for, and I always enjoy it, because it's always like my cousins and my aunts and uncles and my mom and my grandfather and stuff, and it's really cool experience. And the thing that I said I was thankful for, and they put me on the spot too. They made me go first, and they knew I hiked the Appalachian Trail, and everyone's expecting me to come with this like guru message, and I didn't prepare anything either, and in the past I've just said, oh, I'm thankful for this person and this person and this person, and I kind of skipped that this time. Like obviously I'm thankful for all of them, but what I said I was thankful for is like the opportunity, the opportunity to connect with people, the opportunity to be there with everybody, the opportunity to do with your life whatever you want, and it's like I kind of closed it with like, it's not like one big opportunity. It's like a lot of small opportunities. It's like when somebody let's say someone's rude to you. Well, that's an opportunity to be nice back. You know, it's an opportunity to like not get sucked into that and like bring your whole level down to like respond to their negativity with negativity, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's helpful for me to think about it that way as an opportunity.
I love that.
To go on a fear date, an opportunity to, you know, go to yoga, an opportunity to, you know, instead of, and it's all about the language too. It's like, this isn't something that I have to do. This is something that I've been given the opportunity to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I get to do X, Y, and Z versus I have to, because have is an obligation. It's like a should. And we tend to feel bad around that languaging. Like that's not exciting, right? Mm-hmm. But I get to go on this podcast with Jordan. Like, this is cool.
Yeah. And I think it's deeper than that too. It's like that mental state actually triggers like prey versus predator sort of an attitude. Like if it's like, this is an opportunity I have, well, you're the predator. Like your brain goes in the predator mode and you're like in attack mode and you're like, I'm not going to let this thing destroy me. I'm going to destroy it. I'm going to overcome it. But when you put yourself in that, like, oh, I have to do this, or like, this is something that's like being forced on me. Well, now your brain's in prey mode. And it's like, yeah, you're going to be timid. You're going to be shy. You're going to be afraid because you're a prey animal. And that's internal wiring and built into us, you know? And again, it's there to protect us too. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily good. There's lots of things that are built into us that like are there to protect us that are not necessarily outdated, but like they don't serve the same function that they once served.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think what you're saying, like the way I like to share it too, is it's all about the repetition of it. Like that's how we reprogram.
Yeah.
I practice a lot with like mantras, which are, you know, these sound codes that have the ability to rewire our brain basically through repetition.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with our inner dialogue. If our inner dialogue, like one thought of, I can't do this, that's okay, right? Like we all have that. But if your consistent daily thought is, I will never be able to hike the Appalachian Trail, I will never be able to do it, I will never.
Yeah.
Guess what? You're never going to be able to do it because you've already convinced yourself through the repetition that you won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
Same thing with, you know, your actions. It's not one time of not going to the gym that's going to change the entire trajectory of your life. But if you never go to the gym for now every single day for 27 years of your life, you're going to look very different than someone who has, you know, dedicated themselves to that for every other day for 27 years of their life.
Yeah. So what can you tell people about like how to break that cycle if they are caught in it's kind of a repetition of negative thoughts? How do you pump the brakes on that and replace that with some kind of more positive thinking in order to kind of retake control of the situation and switch from prey mode to predator mode?
Again, I think awareness is the first step. So, and that also requires a little bit of a just comfort with yourself. So maybe even before you start to realize, okay, I'm doing this programming, start to do things that make you happy. Start to just actually engage in activities that bring you, I call it home to yourself. Because then you'll just start to develop a relationship with like who you really are. I think that might be step number one. And then you start to just be aware, what are the thoughts in my mind? And that's not necessarily easy to do, right? Like we're not taught to do that. Yeah. So simple awareness. I like stream of consciousness writing. Like maybe you take out your journal. What is in your mind? Spit it out. That can be very, very helpful for people.
Yeah. I've done that with, I'll let you get back there. I just wanted to chime in real quick with, I've done the journaling thing too, but I've also done it where I just a voice memo.
Yes.
You know, to yourself, just like put on the recording and just talk to it. Like, let us know, like, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm struggling with. Like, this is what's going on. I feel overwhelmed about this. And like, I don't know what to do about this. And like, I found that it's pretty helpful actually. Like it's not going to solve your problem necessarily, but it might bring clarity to some of the more difficult pieces.
Yeah. It's like a brain dump.
Yeah.
And then you can start to see the patterns of the thought. And then if you want to take it a step deeper, you ask yourself, well, where did this start from? How on earth did this become my regular? Right? Yeah. Like, was there a situation that, you know, someone told you weren't good enough? Happens in sports, like when we're kids, right? We're not picked for the team. Well, guess what? When we're like 0 to 7 years old, our subconscious mind is still just being programmed. for everything we take in.
Mm-hmm.
That can then become your reality.
Yeah, and it reminds me of something that I said with the podcast with Jim. Well, actually, he said it first, but then we said it a number of times. Is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So maybe you were young and your parents were trying to protect you from things, and like really what you needed was to be challenged and to know that you're capable of amazing things, and sort of did you disservice by doing that, and maybe you didn't even realize it, but now that's all built into your mental state. Is like, I can't, or I'm not able to, I'm not strong enough, or whatever, and maybe they don't even know that they did that. It's like, but when you start seeing those patterns, you do have to ask yourself, where did this come from? And it's possible that it's kind of ingrained in you from a young age, and that it makes it even more difficult to change, but even more important too.
Yep. Yeah, this work is deep. Like, it's not super quick. It is a dedication to your work. To yourself. Again, how committed are you to your own success? Part of that is going deep into these limiting beliefs that might have stemmed from, like, when you were a child and your parents were just trying to do good for you. It just ended up being imprinted that, hey, I can never play piano again, and I can never do any instrument. I can never do X, Y, and Z. Right. And it continues and continues on. Some helpful exercises that I've done with coaching clients are like a rewriting your story exercise. Are you familiar with that?
I don't think so. Maybe a little bit, but I don't think so. Tell me a little bit more about it. Rewriting your story?
Yeah, or rewriting your narrative. Pretty simply, we all have stories that we've told ourselves or that others have placed upon us. Like, even a story could be, you need to graduate college to be anything in your life.
Right.
Like, that's ingrained in society. That's a deep one. That's deep. But a simple story can be, I'll never make money, or I'll never make money doing X, Y, and Z. So that's like an example of a story. And you start to ask yourself, okay, so where is this showing up in my life? How many different avenues is this showing up for me? You ask yourself where this came from, right? You dig deep into going back. Where did this story come from? Where was this imprint first made?
Yep.
You ask yourself, how has this story served me? Because maybe it's kept you small, but maybe it made you feel safe and good for a time. And you're realizing it now because you're like, oh crap, I need to break free of this. Like, this is no longer helping me. So you would continue. And it's mostly a journal prompt exercise.
Yeah.
And then you ask yourself, like, how can I rewrite this story? And you would literally rewrite the story. And then spend some time maybe meditating on what the rewritten story looks like, what power that holds in your life, what opportunities that can give you in your life now. And it's very helpful. Really helpful.
It's not exactly the same thing, but it sounds like there's a lot of overlap with what Dr. Jordan Peterson has put together. I don't know if you're familiar with him and his work.
I don't know him. No.
I'm sure your husband is, just because he's so familiar with Rogan and some of the other podcasts and stuff, and Jordan's been on there a number of times. But anyway, he put together this, what he calls the self-authoring suite.
Yep.
And it's broken up into 3 different sections, I think. One is like your past, to write about your past, break it down into sections and write about like the important events of your past, and kind of from that try to extract out like what those things did for you, like how those things have arrived you at your present situation. Then it also has you write about like your present, your strengths and your weaknesses, and try to hone those in so you can kind of better understand yourself and better understand how to use your unique skill set to do what you're trying to do. And then I think the last piece is it's called future authoring, where it basically has you project a future if you were to do like 2 different things. Like, one, if you were to continue to engage in all of your poor habits and continue to be self-destructive in the ways that you already know you're being self-destructive, and like what your life would look like a year from now, 10 years from now, if you were to continue on that path. And then kind of the opposite side of that is like, if you were to correct these things and like embrace these challenges and overcome them, what would your life look like there too? And he kind of gives the analogy of like motivation. It's like, you want to put like what you want in front of you so you can run towards it, and you want to put what you don't want behind you so you can like run away from it sort of. And like that dual process has been shown to really motivate people, and in measurable ways, like it decreases the dropout rate, increases grades that people are getting back in school. And I've done about half of the exercise, and even that was helpful, you know? So
I love that. I just wrote it down.
It's like when I started looking at the questions, what it reminded me of is like sitting down with a therapist. Like if they were really going to ask you questions, like these are the questions that they would ask you. And like instead of like being there and paying whatever to sit there with them, you pay the one-time fee for the writing prompt, and you can take your time answering those questions on your own time behind your own keyboard or whatever, you know. And I'd recommend it for anybody who's trying to figure out their life, you know, and try to set a new course for the future. And it's not that expensive. I think it was like $8 or something, you know, $12. So
I love the last part of that, the kind of future projection part, because I don't think I haven't ever thought to do that, but I think like I can tell my clients would love that. We don't think like that, but you know, who would you be if you kept up the way you are keeping up? Or how would you be if you are completely changing your trajectory? I love that. I wrote that down because that's an incredible idea. One thing I also do is when it comes to like if I'm doing like a big race, like the Spartan races that we do with the Tilliers, or if I'm doing like a speaking event or a workshop, I will write as if it's already happened.
Oh,
I find it
interesting. Really, I've never heard that before.
No, I don't know where I heard of it to start, but I find it really, really helpful because I'll say, this was such an incredible speech. Everyone was so engaged. And I start to really feel into like what that would look like. And I'm tricking my brain because I'm like, as if it already had happened. And I want to say I'll do this with like running races too. And I'll write like what my mile time was. And it's grossly accurate.
Whoa.
Like weird. And I'm like, oh crap, I might be putting myself in a box then if I'm telling myself I could get that time. Like I could do better.
Whoa.
It's cool.
And for some reason that reminds me of the movie Arrival. Have you ever seen the movie Arrival?
No.
It's a pretty interesting movie. It has to do with like basically aliens coming to Earth, and the problem is they don't speak the same language. Like so there's like they bring in this like linguist, doctor, whatever to help them figure it out. But like ultimately the language that they use is cyclical. Like it's like everything's a circle. And that's kind of the theme of the movie is like we think time is like this linear thing, right? But really everything is like it's actually feeds back in. So like you jump ahead in time and you say, oh, my speech was great and I did such a good job and like it was and then like it makes it true in the future. It's like really weird how that works, but it kind of reminds me of the same thing. That's
cool. I would probably like that movie. Yeah,
that's kind of too. It's a good like sci-fi sort of like. It's a good movie. I liked it, and especially if you like language and communication, like the whole movie kind of focuses on time and communication.
I'm gonna write that one down too.
Yeah. All right, so let's see what else we got here. Talked about fear a little bit. Do you have one of the other things you had on here was the magnetic momentum method? So first of all, alliteration. Huge fan of alliteration. Anytime you can, like Blissful Bridget, you know, anytime you can do that is always cool. So tell me, like, obviously that overlaps with a lot of things that we're talking about here, but tell me more about that and like how you would define that or how you would describe that to people.
So I too love alliteration. Like in school, I was like, okay, need to come up with an alliteration to understand life. But magnetic momentum is essentially a framework for how you can look at your life. And it's a framework for how you can understand how to enact great change in your life. And a lot of it we've already kind of talked about, but I call it the 3 avenues of creation, which are this inner dialogue, the mental framework, the actual spoken word out into the world.
Yep.
That's number 2. And then number 3 is the actions, the choices, and the habits that you have. And I believe that through these 3 avenues, and there's probably more, but this is just what makes sense to me at this moment, these 3 avenues can change the trajectory of your life based on how you use any of these avenues and how often you are repeating things in either the direction you want to go or the opposite direction. So magnetic momentum is the concept that of compound interest, right? Like when you put money in your 401k, it might not look like much, but guess what? It compounds over time and the money builds on itself. It's the same thing with magnetic momentum. So your choices, again, one day of missing the gym, not a big deal. But when you keep doing that, you're going to move in a different trajectory than if you just kept on going. So it's a very simple way to understand that like your actions do matter, and that it's the small, what you said too, right? The small things you do every single day, that's what creates your life. It's not the big aha moments. Sometimes it's the small things built up over time that either are going to help you magnetize the things you want in your life, or they're going to magnetize the things that you don't want in your life through your words, actions, yada, yada.
Yeah. Two things that reminds me of is one from the Bible, the Matthew principle. So basically what that is those who have everything will be given. And to those who have nothing, everything will be taken. And it's like, that hurts to hear that, that's like, what? That's not fair. What kind of just God is that? And it's like, it's got nothing to do with God. That's telling you that like, if you build on yourself and it'll build on it, and that if you continue to be at zero and continue to dig yourself deeper, then yeah, you're only going to be going deeper, And then the other thing it reminds me of is, I forget exactly how the quote goes, but it's like, be careful of your thoughts because your thoughts become your words, and be careful of your words because your words become your actions, and be careful of your actions because your actions become your character, And it's like, it stacks on itself, and I don't have that quote exactly right, but I think I got the kind of the concept right anyway. And yeah, it's huge. And you think about like, I envision those people pulling those trucks, those sickos that do like the truck pulls,
Oh yeah.
Like getting it started is damn near impossible.
But it builds.
Once you get it moving, as long as you can keep stepping, you can tow a friggin' truck, it's crazy. Capable of doing once we kind of get a little movement behind us, in the right direction.
Yep. Yeah. I practice Kundalini yoga. Have you ever practiced before?
I've done Kundalini, I believe, once with my friend Agatha. She had recently gotten certified, I believe, as an instructor with that one. That's it has a lot of breath work, right? Is that the right one that I'm thinking about?
It's a lot of breath, a lot of like mantra, a lot of weird movements, like weird. It can feel a little bit more esoteric, I would say, compared to the other styles of yoga. But Yogi Bhajan, who kind of brought the teachings to the West, says, keep up and you will be kept up. And I'm always coming back to that. Keep up and you'll be kept up. And he says, like, keep going, keep doing the things, because there's going to be some point in time when you are starting to be carried by a force that is so much greater than your understanding and your perception, but it's going to help you move through life. And I'm like, woo! Yep.
Yeah, that's huge. I like that a lot. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's back up here a little bit to, so we talked about the magnetic momentum. We talked a little bit about sacrifice. Oh, this goes back to the idea of sacrifice, but this is my aunt, my great aunt was actually struggling with, her daughter actually committed suicide, and that's such a tragic situation. And her daughter was kind of struggling for a long time. And I saw my great aunt not too long after it happened. It was maybe a month or so after it happened, and obviously still a wreck. I mean, you lose a child, you're pretty much, it's going to be, you're never going to fully recover from that, And I was just trying to like figure out like what to say to her, I'm like, how to help. And I don't know if this helped, but what it felt like is like she was still trying to hang on to her daughter, And like something I said to her is like, sometimes like strength isn't about how tightly you can hold on, but how like freely you can let go. And it's like, for me, that's so difficult too, to like let go when what you want to do is fight. What you want to do is like hold on and speak and do all these things. But like comes a certain time in certain situations where like the best thing you can do is just try to free yourself from it all, and that's obviously that ties in with like with yoga and stuff too, but and sacrifice. But what do you think about that? Is there thoughts on that, or something where you've had to let go of something and it's been difficult? Or
yeah, I also think energetically when we grasp, when we hold, we draw more energy to the thing. right? So when you grasp on the fact that this person died and it's like all you think about, your energy is going there. It's actually depleting you, whether like instead of, maybe shifting how you could see it. And now that I can't imagine dealing with the experience. So I want to be just compassionate with my words as we talk about this, but it makes me think of forgiveness, right? Because a lot of us have had, people that have wronged us, people that have done X, Y, and Z to us. Forgiveness is freedom, right? You cut the chains. When you forgive someone else, you free yourself from the chain of that thing that has held you back. And many people don't understand this, and it plagues them, and it's a heavy, heavy weight that they take through life. And they realize that if they just forgive someone else, they free themselves.
Yeah. It's so important, and it's so difficult. And I know I struggle with that a lot. It's like, it feels so unfair and it feels so unjust. And your focus is on justice or figuring out why. And it's like, you're never going to have justice,
Right.
You're never, like, not really. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard, especially, I personally struggle with that, and I'm constantly trying to improve in that. And knowing when the fight that you're trying to have isn't working. It's counterproductive to whatever your real goal is, and the best thing you can do is shut up and do something else.
Yep.
It's hard.
It's not easy. And when it comes to people who have passed, the way that I see it, which really helps me too, is that the soul doesn't die. Their soul never dies. So anyone who is not in this physical form, their soul lives on, right? Like the spirit of who they are lives on, not in the physical body, but they can be connected with. You can connect with them still, the essence of who they are. And I know that doesn't make it any less challenging for some of these situations, but it gives us like just a little glimmer of hope. Like they're not in pain, like their soul is flying high. They're good. Maybe it's in another body. I don't know. That's how I see it.
Yeah. And the whole what happens after you die is such a strange question, and I've stayed away from it for so long, and I think for right now, I think I'll continue to stay away from it. I think ultimately, to me, it's like, it's not important to me, and I think that's why I've stayed away from it. It's like, we've been given so much, like back to the opportunity thing. Like, we have the opportunity is given to you now, and to put anything, like any chips or any, I don't know, to bank on that. And it's just, I don't know, just doesn't seem, I just don't find that thinking about it useful, Although there is some reassurance to think that like your loved ones are still somewhere, and there is some benefit, I guess, to that side of it.
I see what you're saying. I hear you. Let's continue.
Let's continue. So one of the other things that you had, I pulled a quote from, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, but do the things that bring you joy. So tell me maybe about some of the things that bring you joy, or like what the benefits are for engaging in activities that bring you joy.
So do you know who Esther Hicks is, or Abraham Hicks? No. Okay. So Abraham Hicks is a group of channeled beings. And they are channeled, it's hard to understand. They are channeled through this woman named Esther Hicks. So she channels this collective group called Abraham, who like brings teachings. Stay with me. That's not as important. It's not as important, okay? Right? But she has this really helpful emotional frequency scale. And she says that joy is the highest vibrational frequency, along with love, that we can feel as humans. And truly, that is our birthright. That is our birthright. However, a little caveat, we are humans, and part of signing up for the physical incarnation is that we feel the whole spectrum, right? From grief to loss to shame to guilt to fear to contentment to blame. We feel it all. So that's great. But we have the ability to be up here, to love, to joy, to feel that.
Is this the same thing as, because Raven's reading a book right now, and we've been talking about it. She's reading it, I'm not reading it, but we've been kind of addressing some of the points. And I think it's called Transcending Consciousness.
Maybe.
And it reminds me of that same thing with like levels and
Yeah.
being at those low levels. And like, those are basically like the frequencies of negative thought. And then as you climb up, you're in that realm of love and joy. And I think it sounds very similar anyway.
It probably is. I mean, remember that everything, collective consciousness is collective consciousness. Like, these ideas are not just for one person. They might be channeled down in a different way of speaking it, but it's all similar. It sounds like it. So for me, what brings me joy is doing things that bring me joy. So I like to move my body. I like to meditate. I like to be with people who I can have conversations like this, where I'm like, this is the real deal.
Yeah, I agree.
This brings me joy. Joy, connecting with nature brings me joy. And I believe that happiness is your birthright. Like, I believe this is joy, happiness, love. This is. But a lot of us don't know what this feels like. And that's okay. We're not taught, again, to do everything that you love in the world, because that won't bring you financial success, right?
Right.
So for some people, it might just be doing things that make them happy, doing things that make them smile, doing that every day, even just a little bit of it. Because again, it will build up over time, and you'll just start to feel that more and more and more. Yeah. And that can be the embodiment of who and what your reality looks like.
Yeah. And maybe too, like, joy, it might even be too high of an aim for some people. Like, maybe what you should do is just do things that, like, you're at least there. You know, like when you're there, you're not somewhere else in your brain. You know, you're not like waiting for it to be over. You're not like, and maybe there's some momentum you have to build ultimately. Because even sometimes when I do yoga, I feel that way. I'm like, okay, should it be over? I'm like having a hard time focusing here. You know. But like, it's sometimes things come easier. Like when we had our Thanksgiving bowl, like football game, we do it the Friday after Thanksgiving every year. And like, it's so much fun and goofy. And like, but like when I was there, I wasn't thinking about anything else. Like, I'm coordinating my team and we're talking about what we're doing. And like, I was really there, you know, and maybe that's not the same thing as joy, but I feel like it's related in some important way.
Thank you for saying this. Sometimes I have to be reminded that the way I think is not the way everyone else can relate to, right? Okay. So I really appreciate you bringing this up, because I think that that's a really great first step. Do things that make you just feel there, like where you're in it. You feel it. You're there. I like that a lot.
Yeah, you're not.
Trust.
Yeah. And then you'll realize that, oh, that actually, the reason I feel that way is because it brings me joy, you know?
I like that a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. That's something that I learned from Peterson too. Sometimes is something he says is aim low, you know, still aim up, don't aim down, but like aim for something that you can actually like attain, you know. He's like one of these he says is like, tell the truth, you know, or at least don't lie, you know. Like maybe you can't speak every truth right away and confront all that, but like maybe stop lying to yourself and stop lying to people and start there, you know, and see where that leads you, you know, baby steps.
I like that. It reminds me of I did this workshop for kids in school called Dream Big, Start Small.
Ooh, I like that.
So kind of like a similar idea, right? Like, we can have these huge dreams. Like, maybe your dream is to have this podcast like blow up one day and have, you know, everyone listening to it, right?
Yeah.
That typically doesn't happen overnight. So what are the small steps you can do every day? Well, you can interview people every day, right? Or interview them every couple of days. My goal is to be a speaker across the country to millions of people.
Yeah.
Probably not happening tomorrow, but hey, the more I speak, do things like this, the more I do workshops, the more I teach, it builds up. And that's how you can see, you can really enact magnetic momentum to do your life, to like make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you want to be on like Joe Rogan's podcast, like you probably come on mine first. You know? Like, you know, do a good job here and then maybe he'll call you up and then you can go there, you know?
Yeah. Yep. There you go. You got it.
Exactly. Okay. So tell me about your Soulful Essence experience. This is a new program you have coming up here soon, or a new kind of course or class or something that you're kind of leading?
Yes. Yeah. This is a It's a 6-week group coaching program, and it's online. So I've been a student of many of these in the past also. But essentially what it is I call it coming back home to yourself. Your soulful essence is this place of love, of joy, of being there, of remembering who you really are. So this is really to help people have inner confidence, like radiate inner confidence in their life, bust through those blocks, the limiting beliefs, the self-doubt, and really have a crystal clear vision of what you want your life to look like. So you can embody this place, this high vibrational frequency of your soulful essence. I infuse some of those teachings, like these fundamental principles of the universe, some just like laws of energetics, so that people can really create their life. Languaging, like sound code, so all that's included. And it's a group coaching program, so people can get to know people like them. Because kind of full circle, talking about like your first question, which was like the women's circles, like why do you do it? I want this to be a group experience so that you can meet people who are like you, who are, you know, dealing with the same things that you are dealing with. So it starts in January, and I'm excited to have the ladies come in.
So it's a in-person thing, or it's online, or a bit of both?
So it's actually all online. We have weekly calls like this, through hosted on Zoom. So that's where the coaching happens. And then they log into an online portal where all the content, all of the teachings, all of the exercises are for them to work through the material.
So that's a website or something that you built that has all that?
So I host it on teachable.com. Have you heard of that?
Teachable.com? No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a great place if you ever wanted to like host a course like this. You can upload all of your stuff there. Pay like a yearly fee, and they handle all the payment, you know, so it's nice.
Right. Huh. That's really cool. And something that I like about that too is I'm a pretty extroverted person. So like learning about all these things is like only so useful. Like I need to be able to talk to people about them and like learn from other people and like teach other people. That's a really rewarding aspect of it for me personally. Kind of like it's almost like the game. It's like, you know, you practice all week, but then like when you actually get to engage with people and like learn from other people, it's like, okay, I'm practicing my listening and I'm communicating, and it's really, for me, it energizes me to keep going. You know, I always leave things like that like super amped up and like motivated and like, oh, I'm gonna do this and I can't wait to reconnect with this person, and like it's really fun. So that's really cool. And people can find that by going through your Facebook.
Or my website. I have a website also. It's blissfulbridget.com.
Blissfulbridget.com. Cool.
So they can check it out. And you know what? I do want to touch upon one thing, because we never talked about this. The men in the women's circle or the men in programs like this.
What are we supposed to do? So this program is only for women, you're saying? The online program?
Is only for women right now. And this is something I've kind of gone back and forth with too. However, do you know who Certified Health Nut is?
Yeah, I do. I think at least I've seen their stickers.
Yeah. So it's just like this guy. I think he has like a huge beard, but he also hosts like men's circles.
Yeah.
And he experimented with men and women in the same circle, and he just said it didn't have the same, like the results weren't there. People weren't as vulnerable. Some of the men wanted to hit on the women, like, or maybe vice versa. So kind of the animalistic tendencies were still there, which I understand. And I think that, like, ultimately, I want to have all of us moving to that space where everyone's together. But I think we have to come back to, like, the within. And for some reason, it's just easier for, like, a group of women to be more vulnerable than if there were men there. However, there are men's circles. You should look this group up on Instagram. It's called Men's Movement or Men's Medicine. And they're super inspiring. It's a group of guys from like New Zealand, and they get together, like they cry. Like I'm like, this is it. Like I love this. Eric wants to do stuff like that too. So you guys should talk.
Yeah. And just like for the record, like I agree that separating them is probably has a lot of benefits. You know, I also have this tendency to be like, but I want to come, but like, you're totally right. And when we were on the trail, we talked to this one gentleman, and he was kind of like, I think pretty sure he was wearing like a Make America Great Again hat and stuff. So like, you kind of know where he's coming from. But they had like a group of like Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts or whatever with them, and he was kind of complaining that there's like this movement now to allow women, young girls, into the Boy Scouts, and like, my initial reaction was like, come on, man, like they want to go outside and do stuff too, and like they should be allowed to be part of that. But then what he said was like, when they come around, all the boys act like idiots. Like they don't know how to deal with like this 13-year-old girl being there, and like they all just like their focus is like on her, like they act out because she's there, and it's like, I think you nail a huge point, is that when you mix them together, you're gonna have that like sexual tension of like someone trying to be something they're not to impress somebody that's there or something,
It's
and
biological.
It is.
That's just like the innate human nature of a man and a woman. Like they're meant to come together, but how do you get them? You act like they're your prey, or like not really, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and like I could see myself too. Like obviously I'm engaged now, but like if there's a beautiful woman there and she's like saying stuff, like I'm distracted by her. Like I'm like not in my head where I should be. Like I'm not having like there's a distraction, So I think it's ultimately the right move. So I definitely am certainly not disagreeing with that. I just kind of like, it's good that they have something similar but separate for men, and I'd be interested to kind of get involved in some of that too.
Yeah, there's this, I mean, you probably heard about like the divine feminine, right? Like that's like coming back in. But so is like the masculine. Like there's first of all masculine and feminine energies within all of us. So that's already there. However, there's a healthy balance and a unhealthy balance of all of it. Right? So I think we're just starting to understand that the masculine is beautiful too. And like I don't like when people are like, I'm only into like women's thing. Like I think there's beauty in the men's movements too, like honoring their strength, like inner strength, vulnerability, all these things. Like men have gifts just as women do. Like so it's all coming together slowly but surely. And it'll be interesting to see how things continue to mix or if they stay separate.
Yeah. And I'm fortunate to have Raven as a partner here because I feel like we have helped each other grow in like our opposite energy, like one of the things we talked about is like truth and love is like the priority, and I almost see truth as more of like the masculine aspect of that, and love is like the feminine aspect of it, and you need both, and for me, truth comes easier. Like being straightforward and saying the difficult thing comes easier for me than it does for her, wrapping everything in love comes easier for her than it does for me, so working.
You guys are the same as Eric and
I. Yeah, we're probably a lot alike, I think, and that's good. I mean, we're family now, so
yeah.
It's an opportunity to spend time together and grow together and learn from each other and do things that bring us joy together and all those things.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. And yes, and these energies, it's like, and you also have this topic of like toxic masculinity now too, and like that's a thing, and it's painted as a certain way, and I think it's sort of misinterpreted, right? It's like, and I'm still trying to figure out, so I don't even know exactly what I'm trying to say, but there's like, I think an example is like when you're overly egotistical. Like to me, that's an example of like toxic masculinity. You're afraid to be vulnerable, so instead you create this false, this fake kind of persona in order to protect what you really are, Yeah. And it comes natural for I don't know, probably lots of people, but certainly me and probably men to do that. It's like normal when your ego's under attack to be like, well, no, I'm actually like this, and like rush to that. But it's so like reactionary. And that's something I also wrote here some ways about. Take a breath. Where's that at here? You had that. That was one of your, when you were talking about the car, the traffic, right? You brought up that it's like somebody cuts you off in traffic. Your initial reaction is like this person's an asshole, and
you're crying.
Yeah. And like, really, if you were to just, it's okay. So what? I'm going to be 10 seconds later to wherever I'm going. Like, it really doesn't matter. You know, I'm going to get all flustered and upset over this. Like, why?
Yeah.
What does that do for me? What does that do for them? You know?
Yep. I love driving in the car. I read a book years ago by this woman named Tosha Silver, and she's like an astrologer, but also just kind of witty in the way that she writes. And she talks about the zen of driving and how like all lessons can be learned in a car because you are kind of in your own little bubble. But there's so many things that happen when you're sitting in traffic. You know, where does your mind go? What happens when someone cuts you off? Are you immediately throwing the finger up? Like, I've been there. I'm like, are you kidding me? But then you start to realize, okay, my reaction is what I have control over. Like, normally I send people love when I drive now. I'm like driving, like chanting mantra or like chanting my favorite song, and I'm like beaming love out.
Yeah. And it's funny too with like even someone who you admire, who like normally is so even keel, you get them behind that wheel and they're like, fuck you. You know, it's like person to people, you know, it's like, oh man, like, and too, I think part of it is that it's sort of an unnatural experience too. So like everything's ramped up because like your life is sort of on the line, right? You know, and like there's lots of money on the line because if you were to get an accident, that's going to cost you. And you know, there's distractions. So everything's just like ramped up and you're moving at 60 miles an hour or whatever. And like, we're not even meant to move that fast, you know? So it's like everything's dialed all the way up. So it makes sense that you're on edge, but finding a way to remain calm under those stressful conditions.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. That's why I like to always bring it back to the breath. Like even before we started today, I'm like, I need to take a moment to breathe. Because it's like the most simple thing that we have within us. You don't need to go to a yoga class. You don't need to go to the gym. You don't need to go to a doctor. Like, you are the tool. And you just have to remember that you have this tool that can literally create a different reaction within your body. You know, like psychologically, physiologically, like this is real. This is science also. So it's not just the woo anymore.
Yeah. And it's one of those things too that it's for everyone. Like, maybe going and doing deadlifts isn't for everyone, or doing yoga isn't for everyone, but like the breath is literally for everyone, you know? And like whether you're, you know, doing some basic stuff and struggling with basic life stuff, you know, and you just need to kind of find your breath to kind of regain some sense of calm, or you're like, I've even heard like Aaron Rodgers, who's a professional quarterback, like he talks about it too. Like when he's getting those nerves and that anxiety, like before the game or during the game or whatever, like what he does is takes a deep breath, tries to bring it all back to center and remain calm, because that's really the challenge. It's like things are stressful. You're in stressful situations, but like, how do you find a sense of calm within that? Because otherwise it's chaos, and it's unmanageable chaos, and it's whatever you're trying to do, you're probably not going to be able to do it.
Yeah. And this reminds me of the comeback rate. I think do you know who Gabby Bernstein is?
Clearly, I need to learn about all these people because I've written down like 6 names so far.
I've been reading self-help books for like 10 years, so I know a lot of the authors. But she talks about the comeback rate, and it's how quickly you can really like come back to yourself, right? Because exactly what you're saying, life is stressful. You know, things are happening. It's like the holiday season. Things are even more stressful. But how quickly can you bring it back to self? And the problem isn't that these things out of your control are happening. Like, it's okay that you feel stressed, but how quickly can you come back to yourself? Like, then it becomes a practice. And the more and more you practice it, the quicker you'll just live from self. You'll live from what I call your soulful essence. You'll live from love, joy, like balance. We'll call it balance.
And when you say bring yourself back to yourself, what I think about is like bringing yourself back to the present moment.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to dwell on the past or like worry about the future. Because there's plenty of things to be worried about, right? But like, it's also, you can't control any of them because they're in the future. So that if you're hit with like this overwhelming sense of anxiety and worried about something that's happening later today or tomorrow or whatever, find that breath, bring it back in. You're still right here in the right now. And like, you can only control what happens right here, you know?
Yeah. That's why I'm always bringing it back to breath, to the practice of mantra. which is essentially like mantra can be sounds, but it also can be your words. Like
So
you can constantly bring back.
tell me about this thing with mantras where like you're not supposed to tell people your mantra. What is that all about? I never understood that. Like, because I've always like been like, oh, like, I could probably use a mantra. Like, what's your mantra? And they're like, no, I can't tell you. And it's like,
Yeah,
well,
okay.
that's the thing. So I guess I got to find my own mantra. Is that how that works?
That's like with transcendental meditation, I believe. Right? I think everyone is, I'm not actually that versed in that, but you are given a mantra, and I think it's like your mantra. I'm a little more inclusive, like find whatever works for you. If your mantra is I am awesome, cool. If your mantra is Om Namo Gurudev Namo, like if it's in another language, cool. Just find what works for you. And a thing with mantra is like these are written in sometimes different languages, so you don't even understand the direct translation. But if you can just feel into how you feel when you say it or when you chant it, that's all that matters. You're changing your vibration by sound. Sound changes consciousness.
Yeah, that was something that I tried to do a little bit on the trail, was because Raven said that was something effective for her when trying to get in the zone of hiking, was using a mantra to do so. And I've experimented with a couple of them, but I never found anything to kind of stick, or like I didn't stick with it long enough to make it stick. But I think I could probably benefit from that. So I think I'll have to dig a little bit deeper here in the future and see if I can build that into my practice and gain some benefit from that whole thing too.
Yeah, Kundalini yoga uses a lot of mantra. And that's why I like it, because it's like part of the practice. You know, a total Kundalini Kriya has breath, has movement, has like mantra. So you're kind of getting the whole deal. And it's very helpful when it comes to meditation. Like I do a meditation with the hands on the lap, palm on top of palm, and I silently chant or vibrate Wahe Guru, Wahe Guru. And I just keep chanting over and over in my mind. And I am there. Like I am present moment.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to change the subject a little bit here. I've made a post yesterday trying to ask people who their heroes are and why. And I think I realized that in times of difficulty, sometimes just thinking about one of my heroes and like reminding myself like what they've done, or like what I value about them has been helpful to me. Do you have any heroes? And like what is it that you like about them?
The cliche answer would be my parents.
Sure. Well, what is it that you like about them?
I really honor and admire my parents.
The people are embodying these characteristics, and it's really the characteristics that we admire, not necessarily the person, sort of.
Yeah.
So,
I feel what you're saying.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, my parents have always, I have a brother and a sister, and they have always said, just do what lights you up. Like, do what excites you. Keep going. Highlight your whatever you love. And my brother and sister and I are all vastly different. My sister is a Broadway theater person. My brother works at Google. And here I am trying to change the world with mantra and breath and meditation.
Yes.
Right? So
you guys are like completely opposites in a lot of major ways.
Totally. But they have inspired that we get to choose our reality. And I think that is huge. Like, even if I didn't know it when I was younger, that's what, I don't even know if they knew that's what they were doing also.
Yeah.
That's what they did. And like, that's a hero to me, for someone who can inspire the person to be who they really are.
Yeah, the two words that I extracted from that were inspiring and encouraging. I think there's similar too, you know?
Definitely. Who are your heroes?
I actually have a hero. I want to make like a hero board. Like I want to make like a poster with like a bunch of their faces and like a couple of their key quotes. Let's see. I have it up here. Let's see. I just don't know which one to start with here because there's so many. So a couple of them are like podcast people, like Dr. Peterson, Joe Rogan. I have J.K. Rowling on here. I have Conor McGregor on here, Elon Musk, Edward Snowden, John Mayer, Bob Dylan, LeBron James, Chuck Palahniuk. I got Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Quentin Tarantino, Colin O'Brady, Charles Darwin, and Kanye West. And I've like, all I've really done so far was like pull quotes from them. So like, and just kind of put that all in one spot so I can kind of start thinking about like these people and what is it that I like about them? What is it that's inspired me from like studying their work? Because I just find it useful, you know, it's like, I was in a difficult situation the other day, and I was like getting ready to walk into a tough spot, and I was like, I said to Raven, I was like, you know, like Conor McGregor's gonna step out there on January 18th to fight like somebody who's won like 30 fights, you know, and there's gonna be millions of people watching, and he's gonna step in there anyway, and he's gonna get it. He's gonna do his best, you know, and it's like if he can do that, then like I can do this. You know, and it's like a reminder. Or like Colin O'Brady, for example. I don't know if you know his story. I think we talked about it a little bit. Like, a dude he pulled a sled across Antarctica.
Wow.
You know, like when I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, like if he can do that, then I can do this. You know, and it's like, it's back to what you're saying. It's like inspiration.
I love your idea here. And it's reminding me of this woman named Lacey Phillips, and she creates like online workshops called To Be Magnetic, and it's all about like how to manifest from your subconscious mind, essentially. And she talks about this role of expanders, and expanders are people who you see a little bit of yourself in them, in their success. Like they might have started a place maybe a little bit similar than you, and you just see that the fact that they can do it means you can do it too. So like, that's exactly what you're talking about. Like these are people that are your heroes that you see, okay, they're doing it, I can do it. Like they started where I am, I can do this. Like, you know, so it's a really, really helpful thing. And she says like, stay in their worlds. Like, you know, if you can even work with them, if you can be their apprentice, like try to do that, because the more that you surround yourself with these people, you're going to be uplifted by where they are. It's just energetics also.
Yeah. And her name was Lacey Phillips.
I'm
gonna have to check that one out too.
You're gonna have like a list of names and books after me.
I know. It's like I'm either doing the podcast or I'm like doing follow-up research from the podcast, or I'm doing it for the next podcast. It's fun though. I'm having a great time doing it, and that's bringing me joy, right? And we talked about that.
Yep. And keep doing it because you'll be kept up.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question I have, and you mentioned that you don't necessarily want to talk too much about politics, and I certainly don't want to talk about like current events politics, like what's going on right now. That's like not really where I want to take this conversation, but like more broadly speaking, kind of bringing it back to the Declaration of Interdependence. What issues do you have with the current system and the way things are structured? Because I'm kind of trying to extract these ideas from people so I can start building them into the ideas for renovation, as I talked about in the Declaration. So anything like jump out to you as like, this is definitely not the way it should be, or whatever?
So we didn't talk about this, but the whole reason I was propelled in my journey was through a health issue. Okay, like chronic Lyme disease, pneumonia, infections all over my body, staph infections, parasites, the whole 9 yards. 15 years old. Not fun.
Wow.
We put on rounds and rounds of antibiotics. What happens when you're put on rounds and rounds of antibiotics? Might kill it for a little bit, but then guess what? Your gut is completely depleted. Your digestion stops. So my biggest issue is the pharmaceutical industry and our food supply. Really, really huge, because those have impacted me directly. I've seen, and not even by the doctor's own, like they might not even realize it, but pharmaceutical reps come into the doctor's offices. They are being sold to, sell more of these drugs, basically. Pharmaceutical reps get money, the doctors get money. Is that a system for the patient? No, it's not. So that's how this all started. I'm also a holistic health coach. I've been doing nutrition stuff for a long time as well. So I realized our food supply is completely messed up. Like the government subsidizes things like dairy and corn, and not what we need to be consuming.
Right.
So those are my two biggest things.
So basically pharma and farm.
Yeah, all the farms.
And they're related too. I mean, I think the store that Raven goes to, I think it's called Green Life.
Market.
And they're something they have on the back of their shirts is like, what the hell does it say? It's something like where you eat is either healing you or doing the opposite. I don't have that exactly right, but it's like food is medicine, sort of. I mean, It can be, right? And yeah, it's such a mega system right now with just monoculture and mass production, and just like it seems like the focus is on calories rather than like actually nutrients. Like, I don't know, like for example, like a box of cornflakes, like how much nutrients is really in there, you know?
Nothing.
Yeah,
right? The revolution.
Like you'll live if you eat it, like you'll have energy to burn, sort of. But like, I don't think there's anything in there that's like that you really need to like optimization, because you can kind of think about it that way as like system optimization, as if we're like, and we kind of are like biological machines, right?
Yep, we're computers.
Yeah. So like, what do we do about big farm and big farm? Like, how do we begin addressing the complicated problem?
I think this is how we began this conversation. It starts with the one person. It starts with where you put your dollar. So, like, I like to shop at local food stands kind of thing. Get my vegetables from there. Support the local farms because they're not getting money from the government. It's like that they're not trying to help them.
Right.
That helps a lot. And to stop buying things that literally, see, education is a big thing here too, because marketing is telling people that they should be eating something and it's really not. You know, celebrities have their hands or money in some of these companies and they're not actually healthy. Okay. So it comes with education, and it comes with just going back to the most simple thing that you could do as a human, which is to eat real food.
Yeah.
Like literally eat real food.
Yeah.
Processed food, no. Like, no. Frozen food, only if you have to. Packaged food, just eat real food, like things that come from the earth, things that don't have a million ingredients, even if it's like vegan. But if it has a million ingredients that doesn't serve you, that's not really that healthy.
Right.
You're better off eating a steak.
Yeah. Yeah. And this all reminds me too of like how complicated the world has gotten, because these things, like, 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago or whatever, like you had things that could kill you, right? And you had to be worried about those things, but you also ate real food though.
Yep.
And you had real relationships with real people, and you had to be physically active because your life was strenuous, and like, although they had it more difficult in other ways, like those things were like necessary for survival. So like they didn't end up in a state of like anxiety and depression because it wasn't like available to them, almost, because they didn't have the option to sit around. They didn't have the option to eat fast food and processed foods and junk food, and they didn't have the option to hide away from people and to not have real relationships. Yeah. So whenever I kind of feel like lost, I always try to remember like we're these creatures that like took over this planet, and like we did it through a certain way, and like when we're lost, like bring it back to that way. Yeah. It's like, real food, like it seems so obvious, right? It's like, the state of things is like you go to the grocery store and like most of it's not real food, even.
Yep. But it starts here. It starts with us having conversation about this as a thing, and then someone listens and they're like, holy crap, my entire fridge is filled with processed food. And then they start to realize, and they tell someone else, and this is how it starts. It's a ripple effect. It's a revolution.
Yeah. And what's healthy too is like so challenging because the information is so skewed.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is a like low fat, like non-dairy creamer or whatever, and I'm going to use this. Like, well, I mean, milk's food, at least. I mean, at least it's like a thing that's like really came from an animal, and it's like not processed, I mean, some of it's obviously processed too, but yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. It's like an information war too. And that was something I was hoping to get into with Mike Roski the other day on my most recent podcast. We didn't get into it, but it's like, it is a war of information. You know, and what we're saying is eat real food.
Yep.
Seems so simple.
Yeah. And Yogi Bhajan from Kundalini Yoga talked about this too. Like he predicted this. He died in, I think, either the 90s or early 2000s. And he said, like, there's going to be a time when there's just so much information out there that you're going to be bombarded. So he would say, like, how can you withstand the pressure of the time? How can you discern information from, like, right information from, like, wrong information? Because it's going to be overwhelming. Like, you won't know. Yeah. So having this single pointed focus, using meditation, like, come back to yourself, basically, for all the answers.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, was like, coming back to yourself is like, you have to trust your intuition and your instincts to some extent, because like, you are overwhelmed with information and people are telling you this, that, and the other, but it's like, whatever's inside you, what is that saying? Yep. Listen to that. What does that have to say? You know? And this brings me to kind of my last question, and then we can kind of wrap it up here. And it's like, it's not exactly a question, more of like a topic of religion. So where do you sit with all that? Because I kind of feel like it all feeds into it. Like, how your religious beliefs feed into how you treat yourself, how you treat others, how you view the world. Do you have any of your religious affiliations or religious beliefs that kind of guide you on this journey, or tell me about that for you personally, if you could.
I grew up in a very Irish Catholic family. We would go to church every Sunday. I've gone through all the sacraments, CCD every weekend. And I will be very honest, I gave my parents such shit for it. I would make PowerPoints on why I think this is not, as a young kid, I would be like, there's some, like, I don't believe this. Like, no one can tell me this is right. I was a feisty child.
That's amazing.
Right? That's amazing. I would fight them every week. You could ask them. But as I've grown older, I see it as a lot less black and white. Like, I see the connectedness between all religions. You might have different words for what you call God, whatever. But basic fundamental principles, I think, are amazing, right? Like, be a good human. Don't hurt people. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Amazing. Yeah. My issue is, though, see, this is how you can tell we've moved out of the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. No one can save you but yourself. Right. That's how I feel. I feel we are our own God. We are our own guru. You can make the changes in your life. You can see it from a different lens, but I don't believe in the guru mentality of someone telling me I'm a bad person for sinning. We are our own God.
Right.
That's how I see it now.
Because ultimately, if like you don't see it as wrong, you're not going to change anyway.
Right.
Yeah. That's so funny that you were so like, I'm not even sure what the word is, like questioning, but even beyond that, it's more of like no, listen, this is why this is BS. Like, let me show you. Like, I have prepared myself. Like, and that's good. I think ultimately that's part of the inner struggle that is necessary, because if you just accepted everything you were told, you wouldn't be this beautiful person that you are now, who's capable of like thinking and has the understanding that, like, no, this is my power to change this and to do better. And I think that was necessary. And not everyone can do that too. So we have to be grateful that like, you were smart enough to realize what wasn't true and smart enough to articulate what you thought, and I'm not saying other people can't do that, because I think they can, but I just think sometimes we have to be grateful that we were able to do that,
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that reminder. You're so right. You're so right.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed. And I'm blessed for the experience.
And to have parents that like gave you space to do that too, because they could have been a lot more aggressive and a lot more forceful in that, and they weren't. And we have to thank them for that too,
Yeah. They let me go to a Lutheran youth group when I was younger. Which was really helpful, because it was a lot less like, I mean, for me, the Catholic religion was very like dogmatic, very systemic. Like you might feel that too if you've had any,
a little bit
time in there. But Lutheran was a little bit more just like free form. It was a fun youth group for kids to come hang out. Sometimes we would talk about the Bible, sometimes we wouldn't. That's what I needed. I was like, there's more.
Yeah.
We were like all religions. Like everyone's saying something important, but it's only when you say that that one is bad and this one's good, that's when you have the issue.
Yeah. And it's also good to have that space of community too. You know, it functions as that. Like I watched the movie last night, The Departed, and one of the, I don't know if you've seen that movie, but kind of opens up with this dialogue of the main character, or one of the main characters, Jack Nicholson's character. And he says, growing up, we had the church. And that's just a way of saying we had each other. And that's community right there, you know? I mean, even if it's not perfect, at least you have a community. And at least there's a space to talk about your struggles and to have people there that care about you, you know? So it definitely serves an important function if you can have a good relationship with it, you know? An honest relationship with it, so.
Love that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're almost out of time here. Any other things you want to bring up or anything else you want to promote or ask questions to me before we wrap this up?
First of all, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Conversations like this, like truly make me feel inspired, make me just so happy to see and to just talk with people who see things just a little bit deeper, a little bit differently. So thank you. I'm curious, like, what your main intention, where do you want this to go for yourself?
I would love to put a team together. Like, I am extroverted. I do see myself as a leader and at least have some leadership qualities that I can use. I would love to get enough support behind this that people want to join the team. And I would love to have a team where I could actually pay them a decent amount of money to like organize this effort and push all this forward and build a platform for democracy, you know? And if I get enough support and people are interested, that's what we're going to do. And I think it would be an amazing thing. And I think I could do a really good job with it. So hopefully I'm just going to keep pushing it in that direction, step at a time. And if that's where we end up, then I will be very happy with that. And if we can do one thing that changes something for good. I mean, we're already changing people on an individual level. I mean, people are reaching out to me and saying that they're appreciating what I'm doing and that they're gaining so much out of this. So it's already working, right? So I have to be grateful for that too. But in terms of like big things, if we can do one big thing, it'll be very, very rewarding and fulfilling, and I'll be happy that I did it. I already am happy that I'm doing it, but.
Yeah, it's already happening. I feel it. I see it. Remember how magnetic momentum works. Just keep going. Right. It's building on itself. And I can't wait to share this episode too, because this is awesome.
It was. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciated talking to you. It was great.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Bye.